Well, hello, grievers. Mandy here. Restorative Grief is all about creating easy access to healing, no matter where or who you are. That's why I want you to remember that if you want grief support beyond a podcast, our Patreon features monthly workbooks to accompany each episode, as well as a Discord channel for more private chats and occasional bonus content as well. Supporting this work with your finances means investing in your own wellness and the healing of others, and that in itself is an incredibly generous and restorative practice. The link to the Patreon is in the show notes, but reach out with questions, okay? Now, let's get on to this week's episode. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 161, titled Taming Anxiety with John Graham. Approximately 19% of adults in the U.S. report experiencing an anxiety disorder each year, including social anxiety, generalized anxiety, panic disorder, or specific phobias. And we know anxiety is heightened while grieving as well, with grief expert Claire Bidwell Smith's teaching on how anxiety is the missing stage of grief. But when mainstream approaches like therapy, medication, or supplements fail to alleviate the intensity, what options remain? Today, we're going to hear from three-time USA Memory champion John Graham, who experienced a new way to train his brain away from panic toward waves of calm. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. I'm your host, Mandy. And today my guest is John Graham. He is a memory athlete and three-time USA Memory champion who is here to share his story about working through panic and anxiety without dealing directly with all the traditional strategies that we might assign for that type of an experience. So, John, thank you for being here today.
Mandy, I'm really excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a grief show, not just a panic or anxiety show. So let's also remember that in the framework of loss, all of those experiences, panic attacks and anxiety and depression and all things, these are all symptoms of big experiences in our life. And your story is no different. Why don't you just tell us what about a grief show drew you in to want to share your story?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We all have our own unique moments in life that we didn't handle and it's stored inside of us, and we're trying to process that out. And I think my story starts as someone who wanted to ascend using the mind. I thought optimizing my mind would help me attain and achieve. And looking back, it's funny because I think of it as, it's sort of a trauma response. I needed somebody to love me. I needed to be approved. I needed to be somebody that had to be of value of the world. And it certainly led me on my path, right? But in that pursuit of the mind, anxiety manifested and crept up on me. It was like brain fog, mental paralysis, overwhelm, procrastination. All of these things started to surface as I'm ascending in business and ascending as a memory athlete and ascending as a father, right? All these things started poking all the stuff inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And the big moment I shared with you was 2 years ago. My grandfather, 90 years old, committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a complete shock. No notes, a complete blindside, no idea that would ever happen. And it shook my world. It was a catalyst for growth for me. At the time, it was awful. I didn't experience maybe a typical response. I think a lot of sadness comes up in the family. For me, it was rage. A rage showed up, and I learned that I was holding so much inside of me in that time, like looking back. But because I was able to lean into that energy instead of fighting it mentally, that's when I really learned that a lot of this mental distress was actually an emotional root issue. And emotion is even a label. It's really just energy. It's stuff we've suppressed, parts of us we've suppressed, experiences we've suppressed along the way. And so my journey now is I've devoted myself to facing all the stuff inside of me, allowing it to come up. And that's what I help people with, is reframing it that you can continue with the mental techniques and strategies and meditations. That's great. But for the people who want to go deeper, my story is here to resonate and to show that there's maybe a deeper issue here and how to handle that.
I appreciate you acknowledging that too. That's something we're very focused on in restorative grief world is this holistic approach to who we are. We're not just minds, we're not just bodies, we're not just spirits, we're not just hearts full of emotion. We are all of these things and they're interconnected and you're spot on when you recognize, oh, there was more below just these distressing thoughts and there's a school of thought called cognitive behavioral therapy, which we acknowledge and we say thank you so much, and then we move away from it quickly because it can only do so much before it starts to cause more distress. But that idea that it's cyclical, right? The idea that it all feeds into itself is really hard to hold on to when something shocking like a death comes and introduces itself to our story.
100%. I You nailed it. You
Yeah.
nailed it. Yeah.
And rage too, that's such a common experience in grief. Um, not that you need it right now, but just to validate your response to that sudden loss, the death by suicide that no one ever sees coming, or even if we do, we're still traumatized by it happening. Being able to kind of separate yourself to the degree that you can observe what you're going through is a really interesting strength and challenging strategy as well to offer yourself when you're faced with a loss like that. How did you begin to recognize, oh, this is more than just mental distress? There's emotional things here beyond rage as well that I need to attend to.
Yeah. I mean, I was holding on to it for about 2 months, just constant anger at him, frustration, seeing the family devastated. And after 2 months of it, it wasn't really going away. It was almost like getting worse. And I was having arguments with family members, and it just was manifesting as very loud in my life, which is an indication that we have a lot of stuff arising that we are resisting.
Mm,
I was mentally resisting it all, you know, mentally, what I was attached to most from a mental understanding, it's an understanding, it doesn't fully get to the root, is I was attached to being right. I was attached to, I was right, he's wrong, what he did was bad. I was, because I didn't see how someone could take their life. I valued life so much. I didn't understand, I didn't have the perspective, right? I was very closed-minded and closed heart to someone who chose to do that.
mm,
And part of the healing and the understanding is when you allow these feelings to come up, like surrender to them, let your mind say whatever it wants, let your body feel whatever is arising. That's intelligence. That will inform your being, your DNA, however you want to label it, of what's going on to help you move forward, to move through it, to see it from a different perspective. You literally crack open your heart, you crack open your mind, because otherwise you're just kind of looking through life this way. That cracked open my mind to a new perspective of understanding for him how someone could possibly feel the way they felt with, suicide and what he was going through. And honestly, I have no idea what he was going through, but surrendering, I know that's a popular thing these days, but literally allowing that to do whatever it wanted to do, as uncomfortable as that feeling was, and letting go of that attachment to being right. There was one moment, I share this story a lot. After 2 months of this, my friend asked me, do you still love him? And I was so angry at him that I didn't want to answer that question. I knew I did, but I didn't want to say it. And that night, on my own, I hit my head on the pillow and I was like, okay, you know what, Grandpa? And I talked to him. It took 10 seconds. I said, Grandpa, I don't agree with what you did, and I don't think I ever will, but I love you. And I meant every word of it. It came from my heart. It wasn't like I need to get rid of this feeling. It wasn't any of that. I was like, I just meant it. In that moment, Mandy, like an elephant, I say that an elephant of rage, of emotion, whatever it was, lifted off my shoulders and floated away. The room was lighter. I was shocked. I was like in shock because I felt it
mhm.
gone. And I was like, what just happened? And I said, okay, I tried to provoke myself again. I tried to get angry. I thought of all the memories that were triggering me before and they were gone. From that day in 2022 to now, not an ounce of anger, not an ounce of anything towards him anymore. It was gone.
Mm.
Profound.
Yeah, you're describing this beautiful sensation that we use in somatic work around focusing and felt senses. And I've talked about it a handful of times on the show as well. But one of the practices is recognizing again that holistic approach to who we are, embracing what we are noticing within us. If there is a sense of an emotion that we can feel it in our body or even locate it, that can be a great tool. Sometimes we can identify it cognitively and it's accurate. But often, kind of how you describe that pressure lifting off your shoulders, that's a beautiful indication that you created enough space for that energy, that experience, that emotion to just be present and to just be honest that it exists and that it's real. And we have found time and again that that act of welcoming our intense emotion and intense thoughts is the very thing that allows it to dissipate and to release.
Mhm.
That's a beautiful anecdote from your own experience too, because it validates not only that, yes, what you went through was real for you, but that it is also transferable and it is a real, experience other people can go through as well.
The second part you mentioned of that allows it, that attention and acknowledgement and welcoming, it allows it to process and release and do what it needs to do. I didn't understand that part. I'd always heard people saying, oh, sense the feelings in your body. And I was like, like, why? Like, why? Like, I don't want to do that. I just want to live in my head and, figure
Yeah.
things out. It's much more safe up there. But you're exactly right. And I've learned that I've taken it almost overboard, where that moment I realized I have all this stuff inside of me, attachments to other people, situations, catalysts in my life, that I want them out. But in that journey of mentally understanding this, and a lot, like, I went from I want this stuff out to wanting it, to wanting to embrace it and welcoming in, because I understood the intelligence and the power, that it was parts of me, that it's very powerful. Like,
Mm,
I to this day want, anytime I feel something come up that's tension or conflict or any type of density, I lean into it. I want it because I know that's my next up level, my next expansion.
mhm.
And I didn't understand that at the time, but that was the first big event that taught me that, or led me on that path.
Yeah, that ability to tolerate discomfort and to increase your ability within that is no small thing. And it's a lovely sentiment to say, oh, we can increase our discomfort tolerance and we can grow and heal. But I suspect that your approach to that over time after this first initial experience was probably a little different than I might encourage others to go down. So I'm curious
That's
how, as you've mentioned with your memory work, how did all of this play into this cognitive strength that you were developing that also carried such emotional intelligence with it?
yeah. I mean, the way I was conditioned mentally held a lot of stuff in. So it's very beautiful to understand memory and how the mind works, and to performatively grow in this world, right? A lot of what I did was performative, of getting yourself into a state or adding knowledge, right? Adding and stacking onto. But I like to explain it as it's like a limited capacity. Your mind has a limited capacity under its conditioning. It's kind of like this cup I'm holding. Like, it's limited. You can only put so much water in it. But a
Mhm.
performance like stacks and try to cram everything, and there's a lot of effort. And I realize that now, instead of performance, I want potential. I want embodiment. I want expansion. And that's a completely different process of allowing and releasing what's fragmented inside of us, or from our heart memories, or from our mind, the discord, the resistance, and releasing that, allowing it to move through us, and increasing our capacity naturally, not through force. So the mental side, understanding your mind is wonderful. Understanding your ego and the construct and the conditioning you're wrapped up in is very useful and powerful. But beyond that, um, you are not your mind. Like, you can witness it, you can see it. You're the awareness behind it, and that's a really powerful, deeper conversation for what really are,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And you know what I'm talking about. But understanding that we are more than our mind, that our mind is actually limited in a construct and a conditioning, and that it's not a bad thing, but it only can take you so far.
Right.
And so this realm of energy or emotion or whatever you want to label it, the stuff that's inside of us, allowing that to release, process out, flow through us, expands our capacity to embody certain traits and qualities that really are us at our natural state.
Mm. Speak to the person who's listening who is not on the same page with us right now,
Yeah.
who's kind of like, what in the world are they talking about? They're agreeing, but I'm not sure. How would you invite them into this process?
Most of society is obsessed with their mind, like not even realizing it, living in your head, seeing the world in good and bad. And that's a viewpoint, it's real, but it's limited. We are more than our mind, and our mind is limited in what we can attain and achieve. If you're someone who's listening to this and you're having resistance in your life, you're having the voice in your head overpower you with doubt or subconscious patterns of procrastination or apathy or anxiety, chronic anxiety like I had, there's a deeper realm. We need to not so much be dominant in our mind and rely on our mind, but let go of that control of the mind and go within. And what does that really mean? It means what we're talking about. It means there's energies that are arising at any given moment. We can label them as frustration, grief, anything, but they're energies that are arising that we've avoided our whole lives. And that, what I like to say to people is, that energy that we always try to escape, and that's uncomfortable, like you said, uncomfortable, is intelligence. That's your next up level. Because I tell people all the time, your suppressed emotions are your suppressed potential. It's to reframe mentally to understand that leaning into it gently, or as you noticed me, I went full in, right? Not for everyone. That's your next up level. That's your next up level in all areas of your life.
Mm. This idea of up level for someone who is so driven and so focused on overall intelligence and building a business and all of those different things that you've created space for in your life is it's not necessarily an easy mindset to translate for people, especially who are grieving. This idea of up leveling or building potential is really difficult to grasp when all you can think of is survival
Yeah.
or the next moment. What are some of the moment to moment ways that you have addressed um, influx of anxiety or even as a panic attack have been coming on to settle in the moment and worry less about tomorrow and more about right here, right now?
Mm. Yeah, when you're in survival, you try to always think ahead to the vision of your life or how better tomorrow. You're either, you're time traveling when you're in survival. You're always thinking about the past. Even your body is remembering the past. Your heart
Mhm.
memories remember the past, or you're thinking about the future. Why are we doing that? We're doing it to be okay on the inside. Well, why are we not okay on the inside? Because we have a lot of stuff that
Mhm.
we've suppressed inside of us.
Mhm.
And when I was in quote unquote survival, I didn't label it that. I just, I was struggling, but I didn't want to share with anyone. I had anxiety, but I didn't want to tell anyone. You're in that realm of, you're feeling limited, right? And there's a lot of resistance, a lot of sludge, a lot of like exhaustion of the mind, right? And so the first thing I'll share this for me is I realized it wasn't working because I got to the point where I was having multiple panic attacks a day. And at that point, I equate it to like, imagine you have a heart attack. At that moment, if you survive it, you're drastically changing your life. You're going to eat better. You're going to do everything better because that was your wall that you, and for me, panic attacks every day was a wall. It was like
Mm.
a moment where I go, okay, what I am doing isn't working. And so just for people to realize, like, maybe entertain the idea that what you're efforting or trying to do, or the routines or the things you're thinking about, isn't fully helping in this moment. So, not that you're doing it wrong, but to invite the idea of a surrender, of letting this nasty, uncomfortable stuff arise and inform me, listening to it. And I know that sounds crazy to some people, like, listening to it. What do you mean? If you allow this energy to move through you, it will inform your being and you will start to see clearer. Like, if you let some of this stuff, like, wash over you, the easier stuff to handle, or just try 10 minutes, dip your toe in the water, whatever you need to do, it will start to inform you. You'll start to see things clearer, your patterns clearer. You will start to understand yourself better, not necessarily cognitively, but you have deeper knowings of if you can handle this energy. So I invite people to surrender more to it, allow it to happen versus always fighting it, because it clearly that realm or that way doesn't work.
Yeah. You're talking a lot about strategies that require safety for people,
Yeah.
which you very clearly have and have given a lot of thought and intention to how to create safety for your own internal world as well, which is huge. It's crucial. But you're also describing the wonderful self-awareness that comes with that willingness to sit close with ourselves instead of resisting and instead of pulling away. And I'm curious how your own self-awareness has and healing through these panic attacks has been transformed or changed or impacted by your memorization strategies and life as a memory champion. I mean, as a parent, I only have one kiddo, but the ability to remember anything would be lovely at this point, let alone disarm anxiety when it rises, because it does still, of course, I'm sure, rise for you, but you have things in place that are supporting you to not be derailed by that anxiety. So, what is that like for you?
Yeah. When it comes to memory and cognitive ability, which everyone wants, more focus, more memory, more, cognitive juice, right?
Yeah.
I think honestly, the number one thing inhibiting it is stress. Which, what is stress? It's kind of what we're talking about. It's this
Mhm.
mental resistance to the stuff that's arising inside of us. That's really what's limiting us, because we time travel. When stress arises, we escape. And we time travel in our mind, or we're not present. And so instead of forcing ourselves to be present, which is exhausting, think of presence in a different way. Because when you're present, what I'm really trying to say, Mandy, is when you're present, you can remember better. You're there, right? It's the greatest gift you can give yourself and others.
Mm.
And your memory will skyrocket when you're present, you know?
Mm.
So instead of forcing yourself to be present and forcing yourself to be calm, right? And there's a stage for all of this. I invite you to be present with what is arising in the moment. Because what is arising in the moment, if it is anxiety, whatever it is again intelligence, and it's helping you to move through where you need to be. At any given moment, I know this is very hard to hear. I didn't want to hear it at the time. So take it or leave it. But at any given moment, you're getting everything you need in every single moment. That's why the power of the present moment is so powerful. Is the present moment isn't this golden sunshine and rainbows moment. The present moment means, can I relax my body, all parts of it, the tensions? Can I let that energy arise? Can I be here? Because that energy is informing me of the next move. I don't need my mind to figure out the future, right? You can, but this energy is arising and informing me of my next move, whether it's overcoming a big battle of conflict in my life and how to do that, right? It's informing me of everything I need, but most of us jump up here and try to navigate the world, right?
Yeah.
And so it's counterintuitive of leaning into the present moment, whatever it brings, joy, happiness, anger, grief, all of it. If you're present in it, it's giving you everything you need for your next quote unquote up level or your next expansion or your next understanding, your next epiphany moment that will move you to where you need to go.
Mm. I often tell people if we could think our way through loss, we would have done it by now.
Yeah.
Just to invite us away from those cognitive exercises and the brilliance we have of planning and strategizing and creating safety plans and trying to control the outcome of things that is not available to us. I love the gentle invitation into the present moment because I actually agree with you. What we need is something we already contain. And often it takes someone else teaching us how to ask questions or reflecting back to us what we've said so that we can feel heard and hear and resonate with our own wisdom, our own intelligence, and our own understanding because we know and have encountered what is soothing in our lives, and we know and have encountered what is helpful and what is harmful. And I think inherently, when we are in states of anxiety or panic, that knowing is muted. It becomes very hard to hear.
It's hard to hear because we're in our head, right? We're in our ego trying to figure out what to do. Yeah.
Hmm. How would you soften this conversation? And it's a very soft, tender, open conversation anyway, but how would you soften it for someone who hears the word ego and in that state responds and reacts, kind of like you described a second ago, and says like, "Oh, that sounds so great for you, John." And okay, Mandy, sure, agree. How would you invite them to consider that this is entirely possible for them as well, regardless of the vastness of what they carry?
Mm. Yeah. Conversations like this can be triggering,
Mhm.
especially, and that's actually, I don't want to label it good or bad, but it's for your good if you lean into it, right?
Yeah, it can be a positive.
Everything that bothers you or trigger, whatever you want to label, I like the word bother, is your chance to move in and expand and
Mhm.
grow. It's hard to understand. But to understand the ego, I just like to describe it simply for my clients. It's not what movies and everyone labels it as, oh, he's got a pumped up ego. And we all have an ego. It's basically your mind is your ego. It's a construct of especially the first 7 years of your life. Your brain is in a theta brainwave, which basically means you're a sponge. So you absorb everything and it forms your structure of the world, right? Your box, your belief system, your conditioning, the voice in your head is your ego. It's basically, if you think of your parents, right? Your parents' voices, your teachers' voices become your ego, become the voice of self-doubt because it's their conditioning goes on to you, right? So it's not a good or a bad thing. It just is what it is. So the voice in your head is a construct. It's not you. Because I like to invite people for a second. This is not me, by the way. This is not my genius, but is everyone aware right now? Well, sure. Are you aware that you're aware? Sit with that question. Pause the podcast for a second. Am I aware that I'm aware? Yeah, I'm aware that I have an awareness. Whoa, what's aware?
Yeah, what's paying attention?
That's a lifelong pursuit.
Yeah.
That's a deeper question, but you are the awareness behind your ego. You're the reason we identify with our mind and believe we have all these identities is because our awareness is so sucked in on that ego, believing we are the voice, believing we are those things, believing we have those thoughts, when in fact it's a construct. So that's why meditators, yogis have known this for thousands of years, that if you sit and observe, you can realize that you are not your thoughts. And I invite anyone to try this right now. If you're in a moment of distress or upset, just be like, wow, John's mind is really going crazy right now. And it gives you a little like buffer, an experiment to look at this a different way. Instead of I am angry, look, John's mind is going neurotic right now.
Mm.
It's a different way of looking at it. But if you understand your mind more, the construct, the conditioning, that it is not ultimately you, you see it differently. And it disarms a lot of, like a client I had recently said, it disarmed a lot of fears I had just by knowing that. Because she can see them differently, witness them differently. And this is not for, it might be a more advanced stage for some people, but it gives you a different perspective.
Well, I love that you used the word witness, because I think that's what it offers, is this ability to witness ourselves in a way that is compassionate, that is curious, that is willing to be open to possibility. I think it's that state of observation of ourself that gives us the ability to say, like, oh, I'm not too close to my pain. My pain is not going to overcome me. I can see a lot differently when I look at it from this quote unquote outside perspective. When I observe that story that I'm telling myself, or observe myself in the middle of this situation, and generate some kindness toward that person who is experiencing mental distress or emotional distress or even physical or spiritual distress. That level of self love really is a huge step toward releasing the cyclone of intensity
Mm.
that just continues and continues and continues. And often in grief work, that is something that we like initially try to disarm, is exactly the cyclone, is slowing down the
Mm.
spin so that we can see a little more clearly.
Wow. Oh, something came up for me, especially the parents will resonate with this, is the self-love and the giving yourself space that you need. Like we need to give ourselves more space for, to develop that safety with what's arising.
Mhm.
Think of it like your child. If your child was having an emotional outburst, they were sad, they were angry, you would create space, most likely, to be with them, just embrace them while they're going through that. Not trying to ideally fix it or trying to distract them from it. Like just be with them, hold them through that. That's the same thing you're talking about, Mandy, with being with yourself. That's literally what we do with ourselves to heal, is to be with ourselves, to allow this stuff to happen while it's happening, and not trying to fix it, not trying to distract ourselves from it, but to hold ourselves more with it. And that develops that safety you're talking about, because it's like stepping into an ice cold pool. You alluded earlier that I went deep in, I literally jumped in the pool and cannonballed in because I wanted this to be felt. And that's extreme.
Mhm.
But some people, and a lot of people, need to dip their toe into the ice cold water to spend 5 seconds in it and then come out,
Mhm.
and then try again with their ankle and then come out,
Mhm.
to develop safety. Because some of the stuff we've been through in our life is so um, powerful and uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So wherever you're at on that spectrum, whether you're dipping your toe or you're cannonballing in, it's just about developing safety with that ice cold water, which is the suppressed energy that's arising.
I think too, one thing you just said that made me think, gosh, it's hard to want to observe someone that we don't like. And I know a lot of people who, when they do grief work, start to realize there are parts of their story or their personality or behaviors that they just don't care for. And I was thinking, gosh, being able to dip your toe into something scary and come out and honor that process and honor what you've done, the courage it takes to do those things, that generates a moment where you can like yourself, even if you still struggle holistically with liking yourself. Saying, well, I did this really hard, brave thing, and I like that. That itself, again, creates that safety and what I call a self-attunement, so that we can actually begin that process of like, well, maybe I could go up to my knee into the cold water. I mean, it was cold, but I was okay. And I learned this amazing new thing about myself. It's all a very slow and steady, intentional process. And I think you've really described that quite beautifully.
Thank you. Yeah, and at some point in that, you'll have a knowing that this is helping you. And that's the moment that changes for most people. Is initially they're skeptical, they don't want to, it's uncomfortable, but they have that moment of getting their ankle, their leg in, and having that moment of resilience or that safety where it's like, okay, I can go deeper. I'm empowered.
I love this, John. This time flew by. I was watching the clock and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's flown by. You mentioned clients. Talk to me about how people can get in touch with you or learn more about your work if they're interested.
Yeah, I have a free 12-minute video talking more about this, because I like to frame it as it's an emotional root issue, not a mental. And mental's involved. But I talk about this flip and the 3-step process I use of releasing and regulating your nervous system, right, which is very important, as you know. How to unhook from these emotions in the moment to lean into them. How to do that safely, and then integrate these in a 3-step. And I talk about that at releasepanic.com/free. So you can check it out, try it on your own, get some guidance through it. And I offer an 8-week program at releasepanic.com to transmute and release these energies to expand your potential, and develop your own safety, because you don't need a therapist, you don't need a guide, you don't need a hypnotist to ultimately do this work. Because as you and I know, Mandy, it might require someone like Mandy or myself to lead us in the pool, to be there, to hold space. But eventually we realize that we are the ones have all the power to this. And so we can do this on our own. So I teach people that process at releasepanic.com.
That's awesome. We'll make sure to have it in the show notes so people can find you. And I agree with you. I think that that's what's so beautiful about practices like this is when they are authentic, intentional, and available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, then they are truly tools of healing. It's the gurus who say, I'm the only one, I have the secret, that are probably not being so honest with us. So I appreciate your acknowledgement of how accessible it can become when we've created that space and safety in our lives. So thank you, John, for being here and sharing your story, and for doing this work and creating space to help others do it for themselves as well. It's beautiful.
Thank you. What you do is very important to this world, like bringing people on to share this. So acknowledge you for the work. Like, clearly I can feel the embodiment and the work. When I say the work, you know what I mean, like to get to this point. And I can't imagine the things you've gone through, but it's empowering to witness that. And I just want to acknowledge you. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for listening to episode 161 of Restorative Grief. John's experiences with self-awareness practices and how they expanded his mental and emotional intelligences are a powerful reminder that we are human beings existing in a time and space where we can access deeper wells of knowledge and healing from within. If you're wondering how you can begin the work of observing self and how that might support your healing work through loss, please reach out. While you can learn this on your own, there's nothing wrong with desiring a guide for the process too. If this is your first time listening to Restorative Grief, thank you for honoring your own story and courageously choosing to listen to a new podcast. This work is a gift to create, and knowing it moves your story toward healing is always icing on the cake for me. So be sure to leave a review and subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes. You can find a link to John's webinar and the 8-week coaching program he mentioned in the show notes, as well as details on how to become a patron of the show for bonus content and the workbook of this episode. Connect with me and learn more about restorative grief offerings at mandykapehart.com or online at social media. I'm at Mandy Capehart everywhere. And as always, before we go, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.